all started with an international competition called the Bloody Track, where tensions reached the limit. An exciting fight between the participants unfolded before the eyes of the audience, and everyone wondered who would defeat Lu Sakai or talented Topsun. Topsun, although inferior to his opponent in progress, still demonstrated brilliant moves. The presenter's attention suddenly turned to one of the participants. The incredible fight also involved a player who fell asleep during the match. The guy had just rubbed his eyes, and the audience was already happy that he seemed to have finally woken up. Looking at his watch, he discovered that he had slept for an hour, and his progress was significantly behind his rivals. But our hero was not going to give up. For him, this game was extremely simple. With incredible persistence and focus, he began to catch up with his opponents. The presenter was amazed at how this clumsy participant played. According to legend, only 1 in a million players could use a super jump to escape. Our hero succeeded, and he began to make progress in the game with extraordinary speed. In a matter of minutes, he made more than 20% progress and showed no signs of stopping. With amazing speed, he continued to make progress and caught up with his rivals, reaching 100% ahead of them despite their significant advantage, and took first place. It was announced that the winner of the 32nd international competition was the one who was called a fool. The reporter immediately asked him, as the champion of this game, which claims to be the most difficult game in history, if he had anything he would like to say. Without hiding his point of view, the guy noted that this game is actually not as difficult as it might seem at first glance. He also added that he even fell asleep while playing the game and questioned why modern developers cannot create truly immersive games. While the hero left, the audience discussed his record of completing difficult games, noting that this game was specially designed for him, and he was able to complete it in just 40 minutes, earning the title of God of the Game. The main character was named Ye Chunyi, and his game nickname was a Fool. Despite being called the God of the Game, he didn't really care. He just longed to play something interesting and thought, maybe there is something more exciting in this world. And after a hard day, the guy decided to go to bed. After some time, he woke up with a headache that was simply driving him crazy. Suddenly, incomprehensible numbers appeared before his eyes. The fool felt panicked as he had never seen anything like this before and had no idea what the numbers meant. Again, something incomprehensible appeared before his eyes. It turned out to be a slot machine, and since he was a beginner, he had a chance to participate in the lottery. And the hero thought that in real life there are no login bonuses, and it was the same here. And so he came to the conclusion that who was above him, he's mocking. As he pulled the handle of the slot machine, he wondered if someone was playing a trick on him, and if suddenly someone would jump out and wish him a happy birthday. At this time, the symbols on the slot machine continued to spin, and suddenly they stopped at 3 identical drawings. In Ye Chunyi's hand, this should be his prize. As a prize, he received 3 stickers with pads. A menu appeared in front of his eyes, which indicated that this was a level 1 sticker that allowed him to become invisible for 10 minutes only to this object, although other objects could still notice him. The hero immediately understood what this meant, and the sticker made him invisible, and he also did not understand where he was and how real this game was. To find out how real this was, the guy started calling up the game menu. A huge panel appeared with information about the participant. The character level was first, the life level was 180, and the mana reserve was 35. Excitement overwhelmed the guy, and he immediately tried to call his mother. But the number he dialed turned out to be non-existent, and the same happened with his father. And even when he dialed the number of his longtime sweetheart from junior high, it also turned out to be invalid. He could not understand who and how had drawn him into this game, and panic and anxiety did not let him go. Suddenly, the game information appeared in front of the guy again. It was a game task that indicated that something strange was happening in the factory, and he should go there and investigate the situation. If he accepted the fact that he was in the game, then he had to work hard to beat it, because he did not know what the price of failure was. Therefore, he had to do everything possible not to lose. The guy headed to the abandoned building to explore it, because this was his first mission. He had nothing to defend himself with except these stickers, so if he went inside, he would have no means of defense. Suddenly, a dog started barking from behind, and he got very scared. Yechunyi remembered that he had something that could help with the angry dog. By placing a sticker on the dog, it instantly disappeared from his sight, and this prop turned out to be really useful. Although this created some inconvenience, he needed to continue on his way. Gradually, he continued to explore the abandoned building. Not understanding why it was so dark, the guy continued to explore the area and fortunately took a flashlight with him. Having illuminated a little further, he discovered some wooden structures. Suddenly, his gaze fell on something shocking. It was a girl tied to a wooden post. Realizing that he had to intervene, the guy realized that he would save the man. However, he stopped abruptly, realizing that something was clearly wrong here. If he were the game developer, then this is the room where the enemies could be. When he frees her, she will make a sound, and the one who tied her will come running. Then, the difficulty of his mission will increase. Suddenly, the girl pulled out a knife with lightning speed and rushed straight at the hero, her eyes burning with red flame. The hero did not even suspect that behind him was a girl who wanted to kill him. Suddenly, the guy woke up abruptly and had a severe headache. In the dream, the girl stabbed him directly in the head and killed him. The events seemed so real and believable that the guy thought that he had returned to the real world. But he still had in his hands the artifacts from the game that he had used earlier. The hero realized that he was still in the game. Numbers were displayed above his head and it said 3 out of 3. A moment later, this value changed from 3 to 2. The information panel appeared again, indicating that he needed to complete a mission in an abandoned factory. Stunned, Yechunyi realized that he was still inside the game. He also realized that he had just died and his life count had diminished. This time it will be different, as it is time to enter the game. The game rebooted precisely because of his death. And it became clear that the number indicates the number of his lives, and if it reaches 0. The hero thought that the game could continue after the mission was successfully completed, but the more important question was that he didn't know what caused his death last time. He only remembered a touch on his neck and believed that due to the strength, it could have been done by a man. Slowly, it dawned on him how the game worked, and he realized he was missing something. At that moment, someone rang the doorbell. The guy immediately came to the door and asked who was there. Suddenly, a stunningly beautiful girl burst into his room, and she greeted the hero and introduced herself as Yan-Kei, a college student living next door. Last time she borrowed 500 yuan from him and still hasn't paid him back. This character was from the real world, which meant that the game was connected to the real world. Chunyi's brother to lend her 500 yuan. It was awkward to refuse such a beautiful lady, and he agreed, and the girl knew that he received a big cash prize in this competition. Using a bank transfer, Chunyi instantly transferred 500 yuan to the girl. She was incredibly grateful to him and assured him that she would definitely return everything this month. The hero at this time thought that perhaps this was a hint that he did not receive last time, since then he was in a hurry and the system did not respond to his requests. When the girl left, his relationship with her improved and he was awarded 10 points. He realized that this heart meant a relationship, and in this world there is even a simulation of love relationships. Panic gripped him as the last thing he was sure of was a love relationship, and this could affect the speed of the game. He received a notification that something strange was happening at the factory, and he needed to investigate it. Just like last time, he slowly began to approach the factory. He followed the instructions, gradually moving closer. Slowly, step by step. And again, a tied girl came into his field of vision who did not say a word. He died here last time, so he must have missed something, and he began to look around the area. Having looked at the girl more carefully, he noticed that a heart and an inscription also hung above her, as in the case of Yan K, and the assignment said that he had to save the hostage. The task was exactly the same, and he approached the girl from behind and began to untie her hands, then asked if she was okay. Suddenly, the girl began to smile, and the black heart disappeared. The innocent girl looked at him with tears in her eyes and assured him that she was fine. Chunyi immediately began asking questions. Who was she, and how did she end up here? And the girl began to tell between tears that her name was Yezi, and in the morning she was at home, and then two men broke into her house and gagged her with a rag. The guy instantly realized that this meant that two men tied her here by force, which means that there must be at least two enemies nearby, and without weapons, it would be difficult to deal with them. This meant that events unfolded like in a stealth game, and it was necessary to quietly free the hostage without making a single sound. Suddenly, the girl rushed straight at the guy and started screaming furiously. It turned out that there were mice in the building that took away the guy's last artifacts and tried to escape. Someone started going down the stairs and asked where the noise was coming from, the basement. The girl started hugging the guy and apologized for the noise. The guy, overcome with panic, realized that he could lose. A guy armed with a flashlight went down to the basement and asked who was there. The innocent girl continued to cry, trying to prove that she meant no harm. Quickly covering the girl's mouth, the cunning hero asked her to calm down. To ensure that nothing happened, she was not allowed to ask questions or make sounds, and she just had to nod if she understood everything, and she did. However, first of all, Chunyi asked the girl to move away from him. Looking around, the guy thought about how useful it would be to have these two stickers, especially if we consider this situation as a stealth game. As an experienced player, he understood that he needed to find a place where they would not be noticed. Taking the girl by the hand, he headed to a place where he could hide. Two people went down to the basement, not understanding what happened or where the sounds were coming from. One of them noticed that the girl had run away, and they felt uneasy. The robbers discussed that it was not worthwhile to kidnap this girl, but they decided to continue anyway. Hiding in the chest, Chunyi realized that there were two people there, not one, and if there was only one there, he would be able to deal with him. But with two, there was little chance. Meanwhile, the girl began to hug him harder and harder. The guy began to feel embarrassed, and he asked her to let him go a little. The hero dreamed that the robbers would quickly leave the basement. Suddenly, he unintentionally hit the chest, making a loud sound. The robbers heard noise coming from the chest and began to illuminate it. Chunyi and the girl quickly covered their mouths to avoid making unnecessary sounds, and their faces were clouded, and they began to get nervous. The robbers began screaming, demanding that those in the chest come out. Taking a quick look around, the guy realized that he might have to face them, and despite the fact that he had won in-game battles, a real fight was a completely different test, especially since he did not know whether they were armed. Next to the chest, the robbers found a mouse that began to squeak loudly. Realizing that the noise was being made by a mouse, they discussed what to do next, especially since the girl managed to escape. None of them knew what to do next, but they should leave this place as soon as possible. Slowly, the hero began to crawl out of the chest. Incredibly, they were saved thanks to a simple mouse. Chunyi looked around and made sure that there was no one there, but then he told the girl to come out. Not forgetting about his artifacts, he began to collect them from the floor. He then asked Yezi to hurry so that the men would not return. Suddenly, the girl grabbed his hand and asked him to wait. She noticed that Chunyi had collected an artifact and asked what it was. Overcoming awkwardness, the guy decided to say that it was a plaster, but the girl immediately asked questions about why he was in such a hurry and why he needed this plaster. Continuing to lie, Chunyi said that he just cut his hand and needed a band-aid. He then asked the girl to remain silent and hurry up as the two might return soon. The hero was glad that he managed to complete his first mission. The lady remembered that she had not asked his name. With a smile and joy, the guy introduced himself. The girl began to reason that Ye Chunyi's name sounded a little strange, and the guy thought that this was not something to say to the person who saved her. Then, the lady asked him to let her introduce herself again and said that her name was Yezi, and they shook hands as a sign of acquaintance. The guy understood that the girl looked a little strange. She was not worried at all, but at least the mission was completed. The system indicated to the hero that the mission was still not completed, as if the information had not yet been updated, and Chunyi thought that perhaps there was someone else there. Yezi approached and asked Chunyi why he came here and if he was a policeman. The guy spread his arms uncertainly and laughed, saying that he really didn't look like a policeman. Yezi smelled it and noticed that its smell was nothing like the smell of police officers, which made it special. Chunyi asked where her house was, as he wanted to take her there. The girl answered in a confident tone that this was not necessary. Then she started screaming hysterically that she was bored at home. The guy thought that the girl was trying to seduce him. The guy patted his face to calm down and realized that he needed to finish his mission first. If he didn't go home with her, his only option was to take her to the police station to complete the mission, but the girl also refused. Although the girl did not want to return home, if the choice was between the police station and home, she chose to go home. They came to a huge mansion, and Chunyi was amazed at its size, as he did not expect to see such a house. Shocked, Chunyi asked if this was really the girl's house, and she looked at him in surprise and asked what was wrong with the house. Chunyi guessed that she might be working as a maid here, which is why she was wearing a suit, and Yezi began to laugh, saying that this was her hobby. The girl smiled and invited the guy to come in, since she was now alone at home. The hero remained unconvinced and refused, waving his hand for the girl to go home. Not expecting such a reaction, the girl was shocked and she took out her phone number and told the guy to call if he had any problems. Chunyi turned away and started to leave, as he had other things to do, but suddenly the girl called him. She wanted to say that she didn't think he was as interesting as she thought. The guy didn't even understand what she meant. He continued to walk away, thinking that he had already taken the hostage home, but the task was still not completed, and he did not understand what he could have missed. Perhaps they were talking about other hostages. It suddenly occurred to him that there were 2 more riddles in this task that he had not solved. Firstly, how many hostages are there in total? And secondly, how did he die the first time? Chunyi realized that he needed to return home as soon as possible, rest, and explore possible other rewards for playing the game. The girl, in bewilderment, continued to watch the guy leave, and behind her was a blade with which she could kill the guy at any moment. Sometime later, Chunyi returned to the factory again. It had been empty for a long time. There were no kidnappers or hostages, but there was something strange. Opening the door to the room where they were, he discovered something terrible. These were the remains of unknown people who were located right in that very room. The hero was seized with panic, and he could not understand how this could end up here, and how this could even happen. Returning home in a panic, he began to feel nauseous. What he saw was incredibly disgusting. Chunyi realized that he should not overestimate his strength. Perhaps it was due to fatigue or fear, but after returning home, he immediately fell asleep. Chunyi's alarm clock rang at 9 a.m. The guy was surprised because he himself did not set the alarm clock for this time. On the second day, he again had a slot machine with random rewards, and he started spinning it. It looks like it was the same thing here, where the game allows you to get rewards for logging in every morning. This time, 3 sunglasses symbols appeared on the slot machine screen. As a reward, the main character received level 1 sunglasses with medium quality, which provided the ability to see clues. Looking at the glasses, the guy at the moment still did not understand what benefits this effect could bring. As soon as he put on his glasses, someone knocked on the door again, calling for Brother Chunyi. Chunyi immediately realized that it was Yan again, Kay, and probably she wanted to borrow money from him again. When he looked at the door, he saw something unusual. Through the door, he could see the girl who thought that Brother Chunyi was not at home, and it was only 500 yuan. The hero immediately realized that he understood what was going on, and the glasses could show people's thoughts, and this was an excellent ability. With their help, he could also see the outlines of people through walls, allowing him to detect dangers in advance. And compared to disposable stickers, the glasses were like an offensive and defensive weapon. This game was becoming much more interesting, and the hero needed to go to the factory. Perhaps this time he would find clues that he had not seen before. Sometime later, the guy found himself in an abandoned factory, and wearing glasses in the stuffy corridors was difficult. His head immediately began to hurt, and for his own safety, he had to be on guard. Using his glasses outside the door, he saw several people sitting there. Nervous, the guy calmed himself down, and he had already seen something like this in movies, but now he had an item that could save their lives. The young man burst into pieces, holding his fingers as if it were a gun, and ordered everyone to remain still, claiming that they were under arrest. But what he saw surprised him very much. These were 2 people connected to each other and located inside the pentagram, presumably taking part in some kind of ritual. Chunyi realized that this was happening, and yesterday it was a sacrifice ceremony. The young man's attention was attracted by several other people behind the wall. There were many more than one. Chunya's time to shine, and a true hero should always have a backup plan. Just as he made the decision to act, an unfamiliar man suddenly ran out of the door, as if something had exploded in the building. The man appeared dead, lay motionless, and his face was disfigured. The guy recognized the head and remembered that he had seen it before. His gaze fell on the girl standing with a knife in her hand. There were several more men lying around her, and she began to turn towards the guy. Taking off his glasses, the guy was horrified. He never expected to see her here. Aiji, whom he saved from several men who were going to kill her. She was clearly involved in the crime. Her knife spoke for itself. The hero realized that the same girl was the one he saved yesterday. Aiji also recognized him and was happy to see him. The guy could barely stand on his feet, and with nervous trepidation asked the girl what she was doing here. The bloody lady sighed and called him an idiot, and he still didn't understand what she was doing here. In a state of shock, he finally realized that it was unlikely, but he simply could not believe that such a fragile girl could kill so many people as if she were chopping vegetables. The girl confirmed this and suggested that they die together, pointing a knife at the guy. With incredible speed, she rushed towards Chunyi, intending to kill him. Despite the guy's pleas to stop, she remained unmoved and came very close to him. When her knife was only a few centimeters from his neck, he suddenly felt something familiar. The cold steel of the knife and the feeling of sudden death overwhelmed him. It was similar to a killing method that had been used before. Chunyi immediately realized that it was her. They stood motionless. The girl put a knife to his throat and asked him to repeat. The guy's nerves were on edge, and it looked like she had killed him last time. The girl stated in surprise that she could not kill him twice because she does not play resurrection. Still very nervous, the guy replied that this was not what he was talking about. Suddenly, the girl laughed and thought that he was not so boring at all, and if she killed him now, it would be a real loss. Chunyi realized that she was not going to let him go, and he himself wanted to get more information, say goodbye to this life, and then kill her next time. The cunning girl again put the knife to his throat, and the hero was completely unprepared for this. He thought that she was no longer going to kill him. Calmly, she asked him to show him something more interesting. Chunyi begged her to put the knife away because he was very nervous. Unwaveringly, she ordered him to entertain her for 3 minutes. Remembering the stickers, he immediately showed them to her. He placed the sticker directly on her arm, and obviously she didn't expect it, considering she had the advantage on her side. With the sticker appearing on her body, the guy in front of her seemed to disappear. She never saw him again. The guy happily realized that he had succeeded. Now he must become invisible to the enemy. The girl had not yet recovered, so he could easily escape, and he had a chance to rescue the hostages and complete the mission, and he was very lucky. The knife suddenly appeared at the guy's throat, and the girl ordered him to stand as if she saw him. Turning, she asked if there was anything else he could show. The guy's head was swirling with questions about why this happened if he stuck a sticker that she shouldn't have seen. It dawned on him late that perhaps the sticker had expired or she had a special ability. The girl, showing aggression, asked the guy if he had hearing problems and ordered him to answer if he had any other interesting tricks. With the last of his strength, he said that he must have more tricks, and the girl ordered him to show them. But right now, he didn't have any, and if she gave him a little more time, he would definitely come up with something. The girl looked at him thoughtfully, narrowing her eyes. She put the knife away as there was nothing else to be of interest. As she approached him, she wanted him to let her have her fun. It was about entertainment, which is only possible between a man and a woman. The guy felt very embarrassed because this was exactly what he was thinking about. Yazi previously claimed that his body has a unique scent that she can recognize even if he uses invisibility. The smell was something the sticker couldn't hide. Snuggling close to Chunyi, the girl said that she had always been looking for a man with such a smell. She asked confusedly if he wanted their scents to merge together, and Chunyi at that time thought that this must be a trap, because this could not be possible, and he could not allow himself to be confused. In a moment, their lips would meet in a kiss. Suddenly, Yazi covered the guy's mouth with her hand. Through the kiss, she transferred to him the parasites that entered his mouth, and she did not give him the opportunity to get rid of them with her hand. After transferring the parasites, the girl snapped her fingers and looked at the guy. He began to moan from the unpleasant sensations in his mouth, and his stomach began to hurt very much. Something was moving inside. From severe pain in his stomach, he fell to the ground and began to convulsively lament. The girl slowly undressed and approached. She was very irritated by what he said. She placed her foot on his chest, not allowing him to move. Suddenly, she put her foot right into his mouth and he screamed in disbelief. Yazi suggested that Chunyi play first. She then pulled her foot out of his mouth. As soon as she pulled her foot out of his mouth, the pain immediately subsided. Sitting directly on top of the guy, the girl announced that he was now her subordinate. She sat on top of the guy, pressing with her weight, and asked him what organization he belonged to. Overcoming his awkwardness, Chunyi replied that he was not a member of any organization. The lady instantly stood up and asked him not to make her laugh, and although these two seem reckless, they have no equal at hide and seek. The girl didn't even feel his presence, and this is not the first time he has come here, and he claims that he does not belong to any organization. Realizing the senselessness of the situation, the guy realized that it was better to give up and not subject himself to torture, but he still had life. The lady approached and asked if he would beg for mercy, and the smart guy immediately asked if she would let him go if he begged for mercy. Smiling, she replied that of course not, and everyone who took this medicine would beg her and look in fear. but it was too boring, and the guy was the first to laugh like that. The hero instantly realized that everyone else who took the medicine had been destroyed. Approaching closer, the girl asked the hero what he was thinking about. In his thoughts, the guy realized that this woman was the devil. As she came closer, she began to laugh, thinking he was as funny as a puppy, and therefore this time she did not intend to kill him. Without missing a beat, the hero immediately asked who she was and why she was here. The men perceived her as a sacrifice meant for God, so she allowed them to kidnap her, and she thought they were connected to some gods. But instead, it turned out to be a boring game that ended in kidnapping and murder. The poor kidnappers probably blamed themselves for choosing the wrong target. Garia was incredibly interested in why she killed him the first time, and she could not answer this question because this was not in her memories. The lady gave the guy a card with a QR code and asked him to use it in the future to contact her. Yezi's message arrives. Chunyi will only have 10 seconds to respond. Otherwise, she would beat and call, but Chunyi immediately realized that she was a devil in the flesh. It was time for Lady to leave, and he should have paid more attention to his phone, or else. The puppy might die, and she began to laugh furiously. After he regained his strength, he freed the hostages, and they left. Chunyi said goodbye to the hostages and asked them to take care of themselves, and they expressed gratitude to him. The system rewarded him for successfully completing the mission, giving him 500,000 money and 1 extra life. Inspired, the guy realized that he had gained another life, which meant that he could restore his lives by completing tasks. His level also increased, reaching level 1. A talent tree opened in front of him, and he needed to choose a branch to upgrade. The first branch was related to increasing strength and muscle mass, which could make it easier to lift heavy objects and provide bonuses when using heavy weapons. The second branch affected speed and gave an increase in speed and reflexes, and also brought bonuses when using light, small arms. The third branch of knowledge provided the opportunity to increase one's intelligence, increase the likelihood of detecting another person's lies, and receive bonuses for using technological devices. The fourth branch of charm provided the opportunity to increase the attractiveness of one's appearance, improve relationships with others, and receive bonuses in communicating with the opposite sex. In this game, strength and agility were extremely important. However, if you choose intelligence, it will increase the likelihood of foreseeing danger, and it was difficult to make a decision, since charm seemed useless, but it made relationships with the opposite sex easier, and so the hero decided to level it up. By pressing a button in the menu, he improved his charm level by 5 points. The guy started joking and asking who the most muscular guy was, noting that while beauty was important, this game wasn't all about fighting and killing. Chunyi decided to change the approach to the game and decided to open a harem within it. Suddenly, he felt heaviness in his arms and legs and a strong dizziness. Once he chose charm, all other skills decreased by 1 point. In a state of confusion, the hero did not understand what was happening, since he learned about it only now. Anger took over him, and he screamed out loud that this game was broken. Tired, he came home and opened the door of his room. This turned out to be a serious mistake, and the addition was completely useless, and he felt incredibly tired, and as he walked along the road, no one even paid attention to him. However, he still did not understand how the charm worked, and his skill level was 1. The next ones are Strength 9 points, Speed 9 points, Knowledge 9 points, Charm 15 points. Suddenly, someone behind him exclaimed that Chunyi had returned. It was the same girl who wanted to borrow money from him earlier, and Chunyi asked what she wanted. As soon as Chunyi turned to her, she immediately replied that she didn't want anything, and yet the hero remembered that the last time she asked him for money and borrowed 500 yuan from him. Overcoming her awkwardness, she added that she had just changed her mind. Yang in her eyes, Kyo saw the main character as incredibly attractive, and he had a cut six-pack stomach, and she found his brother Chunyi incredibly handsome. The girl quickly tried to regain her composure because his beauty had confused her. The embarrassed girl suggested forgetting about the money and asked if he wanted to watch a movie tonight. She was getting closer and said that after him they could. Suddenly, someone shouted, "Hey, scumbag!" and the girl staggered, and everyone around her stood up in shock. It turned out that it was the husband of the girl whom Chunyi had just taken by the hand. The husband was furious and looked at him as if he wanted to kill the hero. Chunyi was shocked, not expecting to see his neighbor's husband. The indignant husband began to approach the guy and asked what he was allowing himself to do. The husband began to take his beloved away, and the girl made excuses, saying that everything was not as he thought. Husband named Xiang started yelling at his lover, claiming that it wasn't what he thought it was, and they were just going to watch a movie, nothing more. Chunya's appearance may not have changed, but he clearly attracts the opposite sex. The hero was delighted, thinking that now all the girls would be waiting for him. Suddenly, an apple flies into the guy's head, and he starts screaming in pain. It was the neighbor's husband. He shouts why the guy is so happy, and he will also take care of Chunyi after he finishes raising his wife. Xiang began to take his wife home, and the girl said goodbye to the guy at the last moment. The next morning, the alarm rang again at 9 a.m. As expected, he always wakes up at exactly 9 a.m., no matter what time he goes to bed. However, for now, the main thing is the daily reward. The reward for entering today was a level 1 rope, which can be used to escape if there are no observers. As an additional reward, he received a level 1 phone with which he can hack devices within his reach. The rope will come in handy since he failed to escape last time, and a cell phone that allows you to hack devices will also be very useful. The next task appeared before the guy's eyes: to go outside for dinner. The difficulty of the previous hostage rescue mission was E, and now the task is just to eat, but the difficulty level of D will certainly bring its own difficulties. The more difficult the tasks, the better the results. But now he is hungry, and a walk to the restaurant for hot noodles will be a good opportunity. Sometime later, the guy went along Manhwa Street. The glasses haven't shown anything yet. It's possible that the target was hidden in this particular restaurant, and he urgently needs to find a restaurant where he can try hot noodles. Arriving at the restaurant, he immediately called the waiter and ordered 1 portion of noodles. The waitress approached him with a plate of steaming hot noodles. The guy discovered that he came to the establishment where his neighbor works, and it was a funny coincidence, and both of them were embarrassed. The girl worked here, as did her neighbor. Xiang worked nearby, and she decided to find a job close to home. She apologized to Chunyi for yesterday's incident, and both were embarrassed. A neighbor asked him to help her with something. The girl began to claim that the guy misunderstood her intentions and that she did not need the money. After yesterday's incident, Xiang ignores her, and the girl wanted Chunyi to tell her this and indicated the address where he should come. A mission message appeared before his eyes, and he must give the gift to Xiao. The necklace was needed to go out to Manhwa Street, but something didn't add up, and he had to be careful. Arriving at the address, Chunyi had no idea where the girl's place of work was. When he entered the building, he was greeted by a lot of girls who greeted him like a boss, and he did not understand what kind of place this was and how they could pay the entrance fee. The girls immediately began to talk to him, as they realized that he was here for the first time, and they addressed him as a boss and offered their services, and also offered to issue a VIP card. The embarrassed guy explained that he was looking for someone and almost lost consciousness, as there were girls with large breasts near him. Another girl, the group leader, greeted him and asked him to give his name, after which she gave him a list of all the workers with detailed information about each. This list was like an amazing book because it contained more than just information. but he was a respectful young man, and even if his curiosity was aroused, he chose not to look, trying to remain calm, and he had to act in such a way as not to appear as if he had walked around the world. Gathering all his determination, he turned to the group leader and asked if Xiang was here. Xiang? The girl instantly thought that he had come to rest, considering him a guest, and she said that she would come soon and he could use everything in the room, while Chunyi realized that the girl misunderstood his intentions. The entire room was decorated in pink colors and contained only one expensive waterbed. Chunji realized that he had entered into an atmosphere of adult entertainment and found it inappropriate. The girl came to her dear boss and thought that he was waiting for her. Xiang was surprised to see Chunyi, who immediately asked why she was dressed like that. The lady felt uneasy when he looked at her like that and asked how he knew where she worked, and she thought that he was following her. The guy began to deny her words, saying that he would never do this. It turned out that Xiang worked at this establishment, and the guy thought that she worked here, selling clothes or working as a waiter. Xiang knelt down and Chunyi immediately asked if everything was okay, but the girl replied that all men were the same, and since he called her by name, they needed to get it over with quickly. She could play any role because she had excellent service skills, and the girl wanted him to give her the opportunity to take the initiative. Overcome with awkwardness, he stopped her, explaining that she had misunderstood his intentions and that he simply wanted to convey something to her. However, the girl did not stop and suddenly began to kiss him tenderly. After the kiss, she said in disgust that Chunyi's kissing skills were terrible. Chunyi's first kiss, and although Yezi did not reciprocate his feelings, he did not expect her to do such a thing. Xiang wanted to teach him the real technique, but suddenly the phone rang. The hero did not understand what was happening, and he suddenly began to feel dizzy. Before his eyes, there were 4 Xiang, and he asked why there were 4 of them. And she explained that there were originally 4 of them. The girls surrounded him and asked him to tell him which one he liked. However, his intuition told him not to fall asleep, but he couldn't help but feel tired. But in the end, he gave in and fell asleep. Sometime later, the guy woke up in his bed. The clock showed 9 again, just like the previous days. Looking at the number of lives, the guy immediately realized that he had died again. He didn't take the task of difficulty D too seriously, because it couldn't be that simple, and it didn't even occur to him that his neighbor was also participating. Chunyi could not understand what motive motivated her, because jealousy could be the only reason, but she skillfully gave him the medicine, and the situation turned out to be much more complicated. If Xiang is going to use drugs to kill him, what is she going to do with his corpse? And without the knowledge of the owner, nothing is possible. The system rewarded him, and he received a clue, as well as knowledge +1, and he increased his intelligence by thinking about the clues, since they could also increase his points. Chunyi wanted to use her resources and try again. He followed the same path as the previous time: a noisy street, noodles, a chance meeting with John Keke, and a club. But this time, he was ready for anything, because he wanted to unravel the mystery of his death. When he entered the building, he was again surrounded by girls and greeted him. There was a blue cloud flying around them based on previous experience. This indicated a neutral role. At this time, the manager approached him to see if he needed anything and handed him a list of staff. A red cloud bloomed around her, seemingly indicating an important player associated with this task. Suddenly, a pop-up window appeared above the girl with detailed information that had not appeared before. Chunyi never previously not saw similar. It seemed like such important players had their own attributes, and the manager had a strength of 12, dexterity of 6, intelligence of 12, charisma of 18, and her stats were higher than Chunya and another middle-aged woman who had 3 points more. The guy thought and looked at the girl silently, but then remembered that he needed Xiang. The lady realized that he was her guest and advised him to rest, as she would be coming soon, and in the meantime, he could use everything in the room. Until this moment, he had not discovered anything strange. And finally, Shang entered the room, and the guy was a little worried because he didn't know how she would react to this. He turned and greeted Shang. The girl was amazed because she did not expect to see him here. She also didn't understand why he wasn't surprised when he saw her, and she had her own parameters: strength 7, agility 12, intelligence 8, charm 9. She believed that all men were the same, but when he called her name, she was quick to please him. She had a good reputation for service. The guy took off his glasses and asked her to wait, as he urgently needed to wash himself. The lady was clearly nervous and asked why he couldn't do it before she arrived. Chunyi locked himself in the room and began to think. He planned to use his mobile phone to find Shang's phone. Using the new device, he was able to find her number. He listened to a conversation between the boss and the manager, where she talked about the need to eliminate the one who showed up, and Chunyi thought about calling the police, not knowing what to do. He was faced with a new task: to pretend to be dead and faint. The guy was shocked because this was necessary to find out where he would be taken, and the level of this system was quite low. The last time they kissed, he didn't notice how she brought the medicine closer to his mouth. And of course, he could have jumped back. And besides, he didn't want to miss his first kiss again. And after all, he wanted to have it with someone he likes. Suddenly, Chunyi asked. Shang poured him some water because he was very thirsty. The girl reasoned that this was the perfect time to add the medicine to his drink. Shang wanted him to blame everything on his failure. After that, she gave him the water he was so thirsty for, but laced with poison. The hero pretended to drink water, but actually poured it into the sink, and then began to complain that he was dizzy and the bathroom was too stuffy. The lady waited for Chunyi to lose consciousness. As soon as the girl heard that he had fallen, she instantly entered the bathroom, and he was unconscious and motionless. She was extremely pleased, considering all men to be scum who were just having fun and wasting time on gambling. At this time, the guy was experiencing unimaginable pain from the fact that she put her foot on his back. Shang immediately called someone and said that everything was ready, but the effect of the medicine was successful, and it seemed that he fell asleep forever. And after that, she asked someone to come quickly, since she couldn't handle it herself. At this time, Chunyi was thinking that he had definitely been drugged, which meant he had been moved to another place after the last incident. 3 men entered the bath, and Shang declared that it was an excellent specimen since it did not use drugs or alcohol, was a little shy, and had fine skin and soft muscles, and she asked them to evaluate its qualities in order to sell it at a good price. The men began to feel him and came to the conclusion that he was a really good specimen. They also examined his teeth and considered them a real treasure. Even the smell from it was pleasant. The hero thought about what was happening and realized that it would be better if they killed him than humiliated him in this way. The men were in a hurry to get him out of there as quickly as possible. The hero felt bitter disappointment, not knowing how long he would have to endure this. After a few tens of minutes, they put it on the table and began to examine it carefully. The manager looked at his body and said that everything was fine, and there was still a lot of time before taking the medicine. They just needed to wait for the doctor to arrive. Immediately, Shang turned to the lady and asked if her debt had been paid off after this ordeal. The woman confirmed that the debt had indeed been satisfied, and Shang was delighted with this news, and she sincerely thanked the lady. Meanwhile, the lady instructed them not to cut the guy, as they could not afford to damage his organs, as they planned to sell him for good money this time. Foreign organ buyers were willing to pay generous sums. As everyone left the room, Chunyi began to stand up and realized that he was trapped by a gang of criminals involved in organ trafficking, and he knew that if he was not careful, he would face the same fate as last time. Fortunately, they were so confident in the effectiveness of their drug that they did not even try to hold it, and it was time to use the rope. He used the rope, and it instantly disappeared somewhere. This item turned out to be extremely useful, and now the guy was free. All he had to do was call the police and let them deal with the gang, and the task turned out to be not so difficult. Suddenly, the guy saw that he had 10 missed messages from Yezi. She came up behind her holding a knife and pressed it to her throat, and then warned him not to so heroically ignore her messages, since he had decisively interfered in her affairs in her own enterprise. However, the hero could not understand what Yezi was talking about. His nerves began to tremble, and suddenly he realized that this was her own enterprise. The girl with a thirst for blood invited him to become obedient, after she had already let him go the last time and asked if he wished to die. Chunyi began to think about the words of Yezi, who said that this is her enterprise. In other words, she is the brain behind this underground market of human organs. And she was eventually revealed to be a demonic, bloodthirsty woman. Anyone who dared to step into her territory was doomed to die, and Chunyi was no exception. His life hung in the balance, and Chunyi decided to ask her for more information. Horrified, he asked why Yezi was selling organs. The girl asked again because she did not understand the question. He pointed to the building and said that inside they were selling organs. The girl retreated because she could not understand how they had the right to sell organs, and she did not know what exactly they were doing here. She approached him and asked him to tell him everything he had learned. At this time, the manager and her employees noticed that Chunyi had run away, and the manager began to blame the doctor, claiming that he said that the effect of the drug would last for several hours and could not understand how this happened. Suddenly, Chunyi burst into the room with Yezi. They were both very annoyed and ready to destroy everything in their path. The villains realized that there were now two of them, and the doctor decided that this was the end, since he ran away and brought the girl here. The doctor examined her and noticed that she had incredibly smooth skin, and he suggested that her organs could be worth 20 million. He chuckled maliciously and began to approach her. However, Chunyi stood in the doctor's way and declared that he would deal with him himself. Yezi suddenly started laughing, but Chunyi couldn't understand what was so funny. She laughed and mockingly invited him to continue, comparing his behavior to that of a security guard. The doctor suddenly tried to hit the guy for ignoring him. Turning around with lightning speed, the guy reacted to the doctor's attack. And the next moment, he simply disappeared. Deftly attaching the sticker to his back, the guy disappeared from the doctor's sight. The manager shouted at the doctor that he was an idiot because the enemy was behind him. The doctor turned around, but could not see his opponent. At this time, the guy began to strike with incredible power in order to neutralize the doctor and move on to the manager. With a strong blow of his fist, he immediately took out the doctor, despite his strength of only 9 units. The manager appeared from behind and grabbed him with both hands. Chunyi was completely paralyzed and could not move. The lady continued to hold Chunyi and ordered the doctor to kill him. The doctor still didn't see the guy and didn't understand where to hit him, and the woman asked him to kill him with the 5 that was in front of her. Suddenly, the guy dodged, and the doctor hit the lady right in the stomach. The lady screamed heart-rendingly in pain, but the doctor still couldn't see the guy and didn't understand where to hit next. Yezi laughed even more. She was beside herself with laughter. The annoyed man was at a loss, and he realized that the guy was invisible and thought that technology had reached an incredible level. He wanted to see if Yezi could stop the bullet in this case, and he aimed his gun right at the girl, ready to shoot. Chunyi had a thought in his mind that even if Yezi was strong, she would not be able to resist the bullet, and he shouted at her to run away. With incredible speed, she approached the doctor and stabbed him. His arm was cut off, and he cried out loudly in pain. Xiang and the manager were shocked by what was happening, and they clearly did not expect the girl to be so strong. The man begged the girl not to kill him, and he simply begged her not to do it. Yezi stood in front of him and asked him to call her little lady, offering him the opportunity to stay alive. The doctor cried and said that he couldn't handle it, that he couldn't do it. Without giving him a second chance, the girl dealt another crushing blow with a knife. After a powerful blow, the doctor fell to the ground and could no longer rise. Then the girl approached the manager and asked her if she sold human organs. The manager didn't deny it, but said that Yezi couldn't kill her because she wasn't going to give up just like that. Behind her stood the boss, ruthless and possessing enormous power, and she knew that if she offended him, the boss would take revenge on the manager. Yezi stood calmly and said that boss was a little scary for her, and then she started making phone calls, and the manager begged to let her go, promising a reward. Suddenly, the girl asked the manager to answer the phone. The phone indicated that boss was calling, and it turned out that it was Yezi herself. The girl watched the confused manager as she picked up the phone. Suddenly, the manager realized that Yezi was the very boss. With one slight movement of the blade, the manager fell and never got up again. She was gone forever. Everyone who deceives the mistress deserves the same fate. Chunyi was speechless because two people passed away before his eyes. This is all because of the little fragile girl Yezi, from whom such courage comes. She was the boss behind the scenes. After interviewing the others, she asked who was next, and Xiao begged for mercy and for her life, claiming that she was here for the first time and had done nothing wrong. Yezi was unshakable and slowly approached the girl with her blade. Xiao cried and begged for mercy, explaining that she had a huge debt and she was just listening to boss, begging her not to kill. Xiao's body with her knife, Chunyi stopped her. He began to convince her that she was his neighbor, and for his sake, Yezi should not kill Xiao. The angry girl asked when the puppy dared to contradict the owner. Chunyi replied that she had worked hard today, so sometimes it's okay to let her rest. Yezi thought that this woman was a vacation for him, and he wanted to spare her, and Chunyi immediately rejected her assumptions, claiming that this was not the case. Many people knew her, and if she suddenly disappeared, Chunya would be in serious trouble. The girl continued to look at him calmly and think at the same time. Then she turned and told the girl to leave. Xiao suddenly turned around and refused to be grateful, calling Chunyi a scumbag. Chunyi immediately realized that she would never understand each other, while Yezi laughed furiously. Sometime later, it was deep night. Yezi took a shower at her home after a hard day. Chunyi sat in her room and thought about how the system should have shown that the task was completed. However, the most important thing now was that he somehow ended up in the girl's house, which could be dangerous. He needed to use this chance to better understand Yezi. Her level was a mystery, and her qualities remained completely unknown. The guy was shocked because he had never seen anything like this before. Suddenly, the girl came out of the bathroom and saw him standing right next to the door. She asked Chunyi what he was doing here. The guy was so dumbfounded that he didn't even know what to answer, and he crossed all boundaries. Yezi threw a towel at his head and ordered him to wash himself first, while she prepared clothes for him in the bathroom. As soon as he entered the bath, he immediately began to think that he had to be careful, because he was in the house of a bloodthirsty demon woman, and if anything happened, he would need to call the police. Unexpectedly, the girl called Chunyi by name, although she had previously called him Puppy. The guy still didn't understand why she suddenly addressed him by name. She stood under the door and said that although this entire territory belonged to her, there would always be insidious types who would want something vile under her nose. But the guy wasn't embarrassed and said that she was really good at being a boss. To be precise, she was the head of the Dragon organization, and her task was to eliminate those scum who violated the organization's rules. Chunyi immediately became interested in what kind of organization this was and what its rules were. One of the rules was, for example, it was forbidden to purchase buildings for her business and conduct investigations in this industry without her knowledge, and it was also important to respond to her messages in a timely manner. Chunyi realized that if he had truly followed the messages, he would not have had to die so many times. When Yezi saw Chunyi today, she wanted to kill him. But because of his efforts in protecting the mistress, she spared him this time. The task called Two-Way Life was successfully completed, and as a reward, he received 1 million money, 1 more life, and 5 quality points. Also, his level increased to level 2, and he realized that his goal this time was to reveal Yezi's identity. He also gained 5 points after improving his charm, and the points in other qualities decreased, and he realized that he needed to be more careful. This time, he decided to increase the charm by another +5. After all, a real man must go to the end. After improving his performance, he stepped out of the shower. This time, when he increased his charm, the other stats did not decrease, and he earned a lot of money. Yezi addressed him as soon as he came out. She extended her hand and invited him to come with her. They entered another room. Yezi took his hand. She threw it on her bed. Then she asked him to lie down and not move, and the guy did not understand what was happening here. He thought that maybe this was a real game in a love harem, and he might not be ready, and at that time, she was sniffing him. Chunyi continued to speculate that increased attractiveness among women after becoming a gangster was a natural result. Once the guy gave in to temptation and asked the girl to take control, she immediately told him to leave. He was disappointed that she didn't kiss him despite his strong desire. The guy had exactly 10 minutes, otherwise he risked acting at his own peril and risk. He thought that this woman was taking on too much responsibility, and she stopped at the decisive moment. The guy jumped out of the room and thought that a person could be broken, and she would understand this when he scored more attractiveness points. Suddenly, memories of the past surfaced in the girl. She recalled how, as a child, she would turn to her father and ask where he was going and if she could go with him. Her father always politely turned her down because it was an extremely dangerous place and he couldn't let her go with him. As compensation, her father gave her a large knife. In the future, she intended to use this knife to continue her father's work and protect his territory. The obedient daughter respectfully agreed to such conditions and was glad to receive the gift. Yezi realized that Chunyi's scent reminded her of her father's scent. Sometime later, Chunyi woke up again in the morning at 9 and spinning the daily reward roulette. This time he won the gloves. The gloves were level 1 and high quality, and they allowed you to copy any item they touched, but the items disappeared after 5 seconds. Chunyi was happy because he had never received high-quality goods before. If the gloves could really copy objects, then he wouldn't have to make a lot of money. The gloves worked. He was easily able to copy the glass he was holding in his hand. While watching the news on TV, it was announced that a gemstone had been stolen in the city. The theft took place at the estate behind the reporter, where a sapphire, one of the 10 most valuable stones in the world, was stolen. The thieves entered the rich man's house, conspiring with the maid, and stole the treasure in 15 minutes. And suddenly, Chunyi's phone rang. It was Yezi asking Chunyi if he had seen the news of someone breaking into her domain, and she offered to help him find the sapphire and protect her territory. The guy was indignant because he did not know how vast her territory was. However, difficult tasks attracted him, and he wrote to Yezi so that she would not worry as he would be up to the task. A message from the system appeared before his eyes again. The message stated that his goal was to go and help Yezi find the Star Ocean. This was just in time, since in the previous mission he had almost completely learned the gameplay. The moment of the real test came, and the guy already had the second level, His parameters were strength 9 units, agility 9 units, intelligence 10 units, charm 20 units, and in addition, he had the details of the second level. These are 3 stickers, a rope of the first level, sunglasses, phone and copying gloves. This time the events took place at Yezi's house. Chunyi began to approach the gate of the house and saw many reporters gathered there. There was an orange light coming from the house, which could mean there were some clues. As soon as he looked towards the source of the orange light, he noticed the light suddenly disappear. If the orange light disappears, then the clue is related to the moving creature, and it has gone somewhere. They couldn't get too far in such a short period of time. 2 thugs approached the guy and said that he could not walk here and he should move away, since he should not disturb the peace of their boss. The 2 also had an orange light. Apparently, Chunyi had caught up with them. The cocky man came even closer to Chunyi and asked if he was deaf, and he had already been told to leave, and no one should disturb their boss, who was busy with his business. This was unexpected luck, since behind the thugs there were still important clues, and the men were approaching even closer and were extremely aggressive. One of the men realized that if the guy didn't want to leave kindly, he would probably have to use force, and began swinging his baton. He intended to test how quickly he could strike Chunyi, but suddenly the guy disappeared. The stickers stuck on them, and they couldn't see the guy at all, as if he had disappeared. In fact, Chunyi wasted 2 stickers. But in order not to waste time and discover more important clues, it was necessary to focus on the fact that the evidence was connected to several people who communicated with each other. The man was harassing the girl, and if she had asked for help, no one would have come, since his brother had already blocked the intersection. The girl screamed and begged everyone around for help. Chunyi was amazed by the beauty of the girl. He really liked her. He suddenly came to his senses and realized that he was not thinking about what he needed at the moment. After all, his mission was to save the girl. As the protagonist of justice, he should have quickly rushed to him and shouted for him to let the girl go. The girl broke away, and the guy who was pestering her could not understand where this stranger had come from. The lady instantly ran up to the guy and begged him for help. With his arms spread wide, the guy called the girl to him, and he did not expect that he would be so lucky today and that he would find not only a clue. As the girl ran, she stepped on a can. When she suddenly began to fall, she accidentally punched Chunyi directly in the face. Literally, with one blow, she managed to knock Chunyi down, although it was accidental. At this time, the scoundrel pulled out a knife and shouted that no one has the right to disturb the peace of Jizun Guangshao. Chunyi couldn't believe that such ugly names existed. The villain shouted that he would bleed and kill him, and instantly ran with a knife at Chunyi. The red-haired guy made a blow, but missed, because the hero was incredibly agile. He wanted to give him an important message at school. At this time, he copied the item. Everyone loved to call him Little Frost. Chunyi regretted that now he was no longer called that. It was incredible for the girl that the hero saved her. These 2 had an orange light, so perhaps they have clues. Chunyi raised knife. Then he grabbed villain. The anti-hero begged not to be killed, and Chunyi gave him a chance, but demanded to tell him everything he knew about the sapphire. The red-haired guy claimed that he had no idea what kind of sapphire he was talking about. He was just a local resident and had not seen any sapphire. Chunyi remained steadfast and struck the first blow. The guy screamed in pain as he did not expect to be hit with his own knife. The hero did not tolerate lies and asked the villain why he was here if he had nothing to do with this place. The guy began to make excuses, saying that he was telling the truth. And this morning at 7, they called him and asked him to do something for money. And he is responsible for the case related to the disappearance of the Star Ocean and reports every day at noon and in the evening. At this time, the girl smiled and slowly approached Chunyi from behind. Chunyi realized that he was almost sure that the orange light was the clue. This guy was connected to the case, and there could be no mistake. All he had to do was check the phone records, and he would find the person who called recently. The search was successful, and now he ordered the villain to leave here. And Red Hair was incredibly grateful that his life had been saved. The number was successfully found. Chunyi was surprised that this phone had a location function. At this time, the girl next to him continued to glow orange, and it was incredibly exciting as the game of cat and mouse was finally beginning. As soon as the hero left, the girl immediately called someone. The guy approached the buildings, which also glowed orange. He had been hiding here from the very beginning, and he was certainly good at finding suitable places, but the taxi ride had cost him dearly. The guy looked around the area and wondered where to start. Suddenly, he noticed a surveillance camera, which was worth examining first. The camera filmed a corridor in an abandoned building. A girl with a rifle walked along it, looking around. The camera captured her movements as she walked down the corridor. Suddenly, the maid noticed that she was being watched. The hero found out that it was the same maid and realized that the mouse had been caught. He realized that this woman was a traitor. Her capture should lead to a set of useful clues. Suddenly, a loud sound boomed, and Chunyi was shocked by what he heard. He realized it was a gunshot and thought he might have been discovered, so he grabbed a brick to defend himself. The shadow was approaching, confirming the guy's guesses, and he was indeed discovered. The maid may have scared him, but damn it, he's not afraid of her. He hit her with a brick right in the forehead mechanically, without assessing his strength, and killed her with one blow, and she was probably already dead. The guy realized that it was not he who killed her, but she was killed, just like that. This was done by a certain man who wanted to take everything for himself. He approached the girl to check if she was alive. He then began to examine her body. On her chest hung the same diamond that the man wanted to take for himself. The starry ocean was now his, he thought, and he would not allow anyone to even touch a particle of it. After looking around a little, the man also noticed a bloody brick nearby. He shouted that he saw someone and ordered that someone to come out, pointing the gun towards Chunya. The hero could not understand how he could have overlooked the green sapphire ocean, and he was too noble to immediately resort to violence, but he needed to check this option. All that remained was to find a way to knock the sapphire out of the man's hands. At this time, the man knew that Chunyi was hiding there and ordered him to come out, after which he began shooting at that place. Chunyi felt the anticipation of the shootout and realized that the hunt had begun. Using the rifle, he began shooting directly at the man, aiming for the target. Having fired a targeted shot, he almost hit the man's head, and he became very agitated. Chunyi realized that, unfortunately, he missed the first time. If the man was right, then the guy took the gun from Anna Lee, and there was only one bullet left in it, while he had an endless supply of ammunition. The man was so confident in his words that he ordered him to be shot in the head. The aimed shot was aimed directly at the villain's head. Chunyi was glad, because no one had ever asked him to do this. It was true that the girl only had one bullet in her weapon, but he would never have guessed that he had a way to copy them. The Star Ocean has finally been found, and the next step is to hand over the Saphir Yezi to complete the 2 missions of the system and from Yezi. Suddenly, someone pointed a gun directly at Chunya's head and said that unfortunately, this stone belonged to them, and that's why they asked to give it back. The same girl he saved thanked him for his help in finding the Star Ocean stone. Chunyi smiled, because he suspected that this was the same girl who was up to something, but he did not expect that it would be like a mantis playing with a sparrow. He reflected that the last time he saw the orange light around her, he felt that something was wrong, so he kept an eye on her. Chunyi turned on his charm and asked the girl not to be so rude, because he wanted to talk to her, and the 5 charm points he added at the very beginning should have come in handy. The girl who pointed the gun at the guy was fascinated because she had not seen such handsome men for a long time. She took aim straight at her comrades and said that she accidentally fell in love and he is her man, and she will not allow any of them to even touch him. The hero was very surprised and thought that perhaps he had used his charisma incorrectly because this was not what he expected.